Welcome, everyone. Today's guest is Kat Dunkle. She's an author, speaker, and near-death experiencer, and she is going to share her story with us today. So welcome, Kat. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Christine. Appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. And I'm just really going to turn it over to you, have you pick up wherever you feel is relevant, and we'll just kind of go with the flow.
Okay. During my near-death experience, as I was coming back, when I actually felt the will to live enter back into my body, I heard a voice say, "Bring people to me." I feel strongly that that was the voice of God telling me to do that. And having been an agnostic most of my life and then an atheist, I'm going, how do you do that? What am I supposed to do? And I tried to tell people about my experience, and I didn't bring people to the Lord. All I did was scare them to death. So, but that is my purpose. And over 50 years since this happened to me, that's all that I have done. So that going from this drastic thing overnight, from being an agnostic and an atheist for 15 years and becoming out on the other side, wanting to bring peace to people as far as what's going to happen to them when they die, that there is a loving supreme being, our God, that will lead us into death, that it isn't the horrible thing that we all fear. So this opportunity to give podcasts or to speak to people is helping me to fulfill what I feel God laid on my heart. And I recently wrote my memoir because I am getting older and going to not be able to do this very much longer. I wanted it to live on as well. So I appreciate this opportunity. But my story starts out as a child in a very dysfunctional family. My parents drank a lot, and I know most of us never. Parents are very rarely perfect. I mean, the Leave It to Beaver thing just doesn't happen. And people might not know what Leave It to Beaver is. It was a long time ago. Anyway, the family was very dysfunctional. My parents drank a lot. My father was a very angry man. He left school in the 6th grade to go into the World War II and to support his widowed mother, and was always angry, I think, that he never could fulfill any dreams, and found his solace in alcohol. My mom was a highly educated woman that was a pharmacist back in the 30s, where women just didn't go into that field. And so she was a sorority queen and all these things. A very, very weird combination. And I think he resented her. I don't know. It was just a mess. So growing up was horrible. I didn't really have any solid faith in God or know what that was all about. But as a child, I think I just naturally believed in God. And then as I grew into my teens, I started questioning, and more, I just wasn't able to find anything that I could really understand or believe in. It just all didn't hit me right. And I tried, believe me, I tried every religion, everything. I tried everything, but nothing really resonated with me. So I, in my teen years, became very rebellious, angry. I did lots of bad things as a teenager, alcohol, a lot of things that harmed myself and other people. And so I jumped into a marriage just to get out of home. By the time I was in my early 20s, I was the mother of 2 little babies and married to an abusive alcoholic, and horrible, horrible mess. I remember one night walking out into the living room and looking up at the sky and just saying, you smell alcohol coming through the doors there and smoke, and my 2 babies asleep in the bedroom who cried all the time mostly. And I looked up and I said, God, if you're really up there, if I could just know what it was like to have happiness and love, or to know somebody that loved me, you could just take me away then, just kill me, devastate me. I don't care. I just want to know that feeling for 1 year. That was kind of my bargain with God, was up there, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. So one day I hopped in an old beat up car, threw my kids in the back seat. They were just 1 and 2 years old. Chris was almost 2, and Mark was just a little over 1. And we drove from Kansas City to Seattle, and I got into government housing. We didn't have any furniture. We really didn't have food to eat. We had a little gas portable stove that heated our unit. And we'd sleep in sleeping bags on the floor. We'd see that little pilot light under there and pretend that was a campfire when we were camping. So the boys thought it was pretty great. You know, they had a pretty good time, and we could go running through the house. We wouldn't break anything because we didn't have any furniture. So we'd go to the library. We'd go feed the ducks down by the lake. We had a good life, and I got a good job and a really nice grandma lady to watch the boys. And so I was kind of happy. I mean, compared to what my life had been before, this was really great. I eventually got furniture, and we made a nice little home. Well, one day a lady at work told me that she had met the man I was going to marry, and I went, oh, you know, there's no way I would ever get into that situation ever again. I was so dead set against it. And it seems as though this man that she thought I would marry had the same situation, where he had a very bad experience and was never ever going to get married either. Somehow we got together, you know, we set up this blind date and we went out, and 28 days after that day, we were married in Reno, Nevada by Justice of the Peace, William R. Beamer. And you know, for those 28 days, I met somebody that scared me to death because I felt love, and it was so foreign to me that it frightened me. And I remember looking across the table at him at this restaurant, and I love this man. I love this man. I mean, he was handsome. He was gentle and kind. He owned his own home. He had a brand new car. He had a solid job. I mean, he loved my boys. I mean, it was just unreal. So this man that he worked with came in while we were sitting there, and he was so drunk he couldn't even stand up, and he waddled over to us and he said, you know, you kids belong together. What would it take for you to get married? And Don looked at me and he said, well, if I had $200, we'd drive to Reno and get married tonight. And I went, oh my God, you know, how could he possibly love me? How could he feel the way about me like I did him? That was just, how could he? He was perfect. And anyway, we did. And that was 55 years ago, tomorrow, actually. So in that 28 days, that was exactly a year, because one year later, we went out on our first anniversary and had our very first argument. And it was horrible. We had a very bad argument. It ended up with me you know, running off, and he had bought this tavern about 6 months prior, and I was really against it, but it was kind of his dream to have his own business. He had a solid job in real estate, and I'm going, no, not alcohol again. I was so opposed to it, but it was his dream, and I couldn't stand in his way. He wanted to be his own boss and have his own business, and who doesn't want that? And he had a partner was not a very scrupulous person, but anyway, he had this tavern. And so on our first anniversary, we went out to this nice dinner, and he said, well, why don't we just stop by and see how things are going at the tavern? And so we did, and I was sitting in the back, kind of in the dark, and everybody was congratulating him. This is really great. You're doing such a good job. And there was this barmaid that was just flirting with him. It was so obvious. And I'm sitting there, I'm getting angrier and angrier, and like, you know, what are you doing? And it's our anniversary, and she was flicking her hair at him, and he was fixing her necklace, and I just went kaboom, and I just got up and ran out the door and ran down the street, and it was raining, and I didn't even take my coat, my purse, anything, and just running, because that's what I did when I would get frustrated, was run away from a situation. And this man stopped and said, lady, do you want to ride? And I said, yeah. And I jumped in a car with a total stranger and crying and drove around. He said, would you like to go home now? And I said, yes. He took me home, and Don was there by that time, and he was just furious. So we had this horrible fight, just 1 year, just like that bargain I had made with God. And but I didn't really think about that at the time. Anyway, that's what was the downfall start of our marriage, and it started crumbling. And I didn't work at the tavern, but except for one night a week when we had this promotion. It was Monday night on April 6th, and I got ready to go to work and lean down and kiss the boys goodbye, and went into work. And as I was walking in the door, Dawn was leaning over the counter talking on the phone, very intent, and I couldn't imagine, because the place was just packed with people and it was noisy. And anyway, he hung up the phone and came over and grabbed my arm and was pulling me out the door. And and saying words that just I didn't understand that my son Mark had been hit by a car. And I just, my legs just kind of went to rubber at that point. And we got in the car and got to the hospital about the same time as the ambulance pulled in, and they pulled Mark out. And it was just unbelievable. We were led into a room where we waited for hour after excruciating hour. And the nurse came out and told me that I needed to call a priest. Well, I didn't know a priest. I didn't go to church. I didn't believe in God. And it was, I said, no, I don't want a priest in there. I want them to fix my son. I don't want anybody interfering. And so she turned away, and pretty soon this priest came, and they walked by me into the room and shut the door behind them. And I was so angry that priest was in there interfering with what they were doing for Mark. And pretty soon he left, and hours later we were done. I walked down the hall, and sun was just coming up, and people were starting to go to work, and I'm going, a normal day is starting for people. I mean, life is anything but normal. Don't they know what's going on inside this hospital? And it was just a strange feeling. I heard footsteps coming down the hallway behind me, and it was the doctor, and he said that they weren't able to save Mark. And I just don't remember much after that, except we walked into Mark's room, and I pulled the covers up over him because he felt cold, and I leaned down to kiss him and saw a tear in his eye. And I said, "Don't cry, Mark, because Mommy's here. Mommy can fix anything, and you're going to be just fine." And then I don't remember. I just collapsed at that point. And then we were in the car, and I didn't want to go home. I couldn't face Mark's things there, his toys and his clothes. And we drove around for hours and hours, and finally headed home. And Chris, my other son, came running up to me and, Mommy, did you hear what happened to Marky? And I had to tell him. He was with his brother when he was hit by the car and saw the whole thing. And everybody ran to Mark, and Chris was left there alone to walk home and tell the babysitter. And I just couldn't imagine the horror in this little kid's heart. He was just he was only at that point just not quite 9 years old. And so it was just horrible for him and horrible for all of us. I just became so, I don't know what the word is, where you can't leave your house. It's just, a mental thing where I couldn't face people because I felt so horribly guilty, or if somebody would smile or laugh, or it was just like, how can you do that? It's like this horrible guilt that was so overwhelming in me that kids aren't supposed to die before their moms do. And so I just couldn't leave the house. And Don put up with that and was very understanding for quite a while, but pretty soon he told me that I had to get out of the house. And we were going to go that night to some friend's house. And so I started objecting. And as we went out to get in the car, we started arguing about it. And we got in the car, and he started driving. And I was yelling at him, and he said, "Kat, you got to move on. You've got to move on from this." And I just lost it, because I move on. What are you talking about? I'll never move on. And I came across the car, just smashing at his face, just so angry and frustrated. And he's trying to drive the car, and he took his arm and went like that. It hit me in the back, and it knocked me over to my side of the car. And I didn't realize then, but that blow had caused the liver inside of me to burst. Now, there's a little sac around your liver. Your liver's like a jello or something, and this sac keeps it all together. Well, that burst, blew my liver into pieces and caused massive internal bleeding. So I don't know how I lived even to get to the hospital with that. I don't know how bad it was at that point, but we got home. Don turned the car around at that point, after he shoved me back over there, and we went back home. And he got out of the car and went in the house, was splashing cold water in his face. And I grabbed the car keys and I took off in the car, because again, that's what I did when I got in a corner. I ran, and he came yelling out of the door, screaming at me. But I took off, and I felt this horrible pain inside of me. I didn't know if my heart was broken or if there really was pain in there. And I got out on the freeway, and I had to pull over because the pain became so intense, and I was on the side of the road and my clothes undone and bending over and cars splashing water and honking at me. And I thought, I got to get back home. And I got back in the car. I got back home. I have no idea how, kind of stumbling up the driveway. Dawn was standing in the door again, screaming at me. And I said, I need to call an ambulance. There's something terribly wrong with me. I'm in a lot of pain. And so he just believed me. And he says, well, I'll take you to the hospital if you're that bad. And he took me to the hospital. I was they didn't have MRIs and CAT scans. This is back in the 60s. And so they had to just go by, my blood count was dropping, my blood pressure, everything was just off the chart. So they came in the room and said that I had to go into surgery right away, that they had to find out what was wrong and something. And they asked me how I got the bruise on my back. And I didn't want to tell them. I didn't want them to think Don was a wife beater, because he wasn't. And, it was just, they wouldn't have understood this reasoning for the fight that we had and what was going on in our lives. Anyway, I went into surgery and they put the mask over my face, and I knew that I should be going under, but I didn't go under. And I remember everything going black, and I was trying to breathe, and my hands were tied down or, secured for surgery. And I wanted to get the mask off my face so I could breathe, but I couldn't move. And I was in just total panic, and it was dull. Everything was dark. I couldn't see anything, and just struggling, like you're going underwater and you're trying to breathe and you can't. And then I went through a transition of going from this darkness into what appeared to be a hallway or a cave or whatever, just a darkened hallway. And I saw my sons and Dawn's standing by what appeared to be a street light, and it was raining, and they were crying because I was dead. And I was trying to tell them, no, I'm not dead. I'm okay. Something strange is happening, but I'm not dead. I'm okay. And then I moved on, and I saw 4 people standing off to my left in street clothes, just normal people. And they were looking at me like they were really concerned. And I thought, what's wrong? They weren't people I knew. I don't know who they were, and don't to this day. It could have been distant relatives. I really don't know. My son Mark wasn't there. I didn't see him. I don't know that I would have wanted to. I don't know at that point. But then I started drifting down the hallway, and this thought came to me: there is no God. And all of a sudden, this horrendous noise, like a freight train just rushing right past my ears, this loud noise, and a rope being pulled through me a million zillion miles an hour, so fast that it was burning feeling. And then it stopped, and I knew that God existed. And I can't tell you or put into words how I knew, but I knew, just like if I put my hand up here, and I know that's my hand, and you're not going to convince me in any way that it's not. So that's the knowing that I knew that God existed. I knew it. And here, most of my life, I didn't believe in God. So to have this knowledge was exciting, and it was great. And then I heard the noise again, and I felt the pulling through the middle of me. And sometimes I think maybe that was just God pulling all the hatred and the anger and everything out of the middle of me. I really don't know the purpose of that. But again, it stopped, and I knew that heaven existed, and I was moving towards that, and I was excited. And I didn't think about anything else. I didn't think about my kids or my husband or life or anything. I just thought, I'm going to heaven, and that excitement, the overwhelming excitement, and it's not describable. I have never heard anybody be able to describe what the feelings of heaven or God are like. This peace that the Bible calls peace that passes all understanding is far beyond even that. I mean, it's this euphoria, this just incredible feeling. And I was being pulled towards that. I saw the brightness of that. I saw some kind of structure holding it back. I was almost there. And then the floor dropped out beneath me, and I started falling into total blackness. And I knew that I was in hell. I don't know what part of hell I was in. I wasn't in a lake of fire. It was just total darkness, and the separation of aloneness that, again, I can't describe, but I was falling into this total darkness, knowing that I had sent myself there. And the reason that I knew that I had sent myself there was because I had blasphemed God. I didn't want to believe in God. I was the one that said, God, I don't believe in you. I don't want any part of you. I hate you if you do exist. I was the one that did it. So God didn't send me to hell. I sent myself there, and I knew it. I knew that. And I was screaming, God, I believe in you now. I know you exist. Please save me from this. I'm screaming and falling into this darkness, knowing it's for eternity. I'm never going to hit bottom. I can't commit suicide. Who's going to come in here and save me? And I thought to myself, God doesn't even know I'm here. I mean, I'm non-existent at this point. And how can anybody save something that doesn't exist? So I knew that wasn't going to happen. And I was screaming. And all of a sudden it just stopped. And I started spiraling backwards, back into the tunnel, excited, somewhat that I was gone from there. And then, like I say, as I got almost back, I heard this voice say, bring people to me. Then I felt my spirit, who I am, my spirit entered back into my body. So at that point, I wanted to live. When that spirit had left my body, I didn't want to live. So I believe they're two separate things. Our physical bodies, we have a spiritual self. It's who we are. And this physical body is going to go away. It's going to turn to dust or whatever it does. But our spiritual self lives forever. And I came then back into being alive, back in the surgery room when they were feverishly working on me, tubes coming in everywhere, and I'm screaming to them, I died. I know that God exists. He does. And I haven't stopped screaming that since. So that's my story in a nutshell. And I do, like I said, it's been over 50 years, and I have never wavered one little bit. I've grown stronger in my faith and knowing, and miraculous things happened. I did change drastically, but also my life changed, and Don's and my relationship strengthened, became beautiful. Don became a really good father, and I went to bed one night. We were bankrupt through all of the Mark dying and the hospital bills that I had run up. We were bankrupt, literally. We lost the tavern business. We lost everything, totally bankrupt. And I went to bed one night and I dreamt about starting a business. I had worked for an auto agency prior to all this. And one day at the auto agency, I had sat down and just started calling some customers up just to ask them how their experience was. And I really got an earful. We're talking back in the 60s, where the auto agency was not a very scrupulous business. It was pretty bad. But the owners were usually nice people, but communications not being what they are today, they didn't have any way of knowing really what was going on in their business. So here I was, being the customer's voice, going to the owner and saying, look what happened here. And he just went crazy. This is great. He made me a manager and all this. Well, so that was my job when this all happened to me. So I went to bed that night and I dreamt about starting a business. Well, I had a high school education. My dad told me, well, you're not college material, and they wouldn't spend the money to send me to college. And I was always put down as far as my mental achievements went. When I was even in schools, we were transferred all over the United States. My dad was with the government. So I would be just put in schools and kind of learn what you can, because the curriculum was different. And so I never really thought that I was a very smart kid. I kind of got by or bluffing, but I started reading all the books I could about the auto industry and self-taught on everything I ever learned. Anyway, this dream told me how to start this business and encouraged me, and I did. And I started this business back in the 60s, and it became an international, still in business today. My son runs it. We became, very, very financially secure with that business, and had a great life. And my son is enjoying it now and made it even better. So just things like that happened, and being just this compassion that I have for anybody, especially people that have lost children, people that have just got the news that they have cancer and they're going to die, or their husband is dying or just died, and they wonder where they are or what's happening to them. And that's my mission in life now. So I pray that this story can help anybody to understand that there is something after death, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much, Kat. It's such a beautiful story. I have a few questions. Do you think because of that experience and that connection that you really remembered, should I say, you were more open to guidance, such as the dream coming in with what to do next and all of that? Do you feel like you're living in alignment in a whole new way?
You mean as far as my relationship with God, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said you had your dream after that kind of gave you guidance to start your business. And
I absolutely, I don't make very many moves without consulting. And I just have to trust that voice I hear inside of me. I don't hear a verbal voice say, Kathy, do this or that. It's like I kind of know. And I think the more you tend to lean towards that type of communication, the better it gets. So I pretty much know that voice that's speaking to me. And yes, to answer your question, absolutely.
Wonderful. How could we, the listeners, really tune into or listen for that voice of guidance? Do you have any suggestions?
We know, most of us know morally right from wrong. And I would say if that voice you're hearing is telling you to do something that you know is morally wrong, you're hearing from the wrong source. And I will say, there are two of them out there fighting for your soul. And people will tell me, well, hell doesn't exist. The loving God would never send anybody to hell. Well, he doesn't send anybody to hell. He didn't send me to hell. And but we have a choice. And I think everybody has the same experience that I had during the dying process, and they will have that choice. So you could have a loved one that doesn't believe in God or a higher power or anything. This opportunity will be given to them. And you think, well, they'd have to be crazy to choose to go to hell. Well, that's not the way it works. There's, like I said, there's this fight going on, and there is true evil in this world. There's true evil in people that they didn't want anything to do with anything, goodness or whatever. Satan and a third of the angels in heaven left and felt they could be better than God. And they are roaming this earth. There is a fight going on for your very soul. And if they left, if they thought they could be as God, they knew that. They thought, I could be as God. They're still fighting. And so the true evil of this world will choose that. They'll choose to be that way, to choose to be on that side. And it'll look good to them. And maybe it's good for them. I don't know. And what the burning lake of fire is and what the pain of hell is, I don't know about that. I do know that I did experience that. I experienced that separation from God. But it wasn't until after I didn't believe it. I cried out to God, please save me. I know that you exist and I want to be back there. So this fight that goes on earth between good and evil is real. And I think you can see it. You can see evil in people. You can see evil that exists here on earth. So does that answer your question? I can't remember the question.
And much more. It's been said that suffering is caused from believing that we are separate. Would you agree with that statement?
That we're separate from God?
Yeah.
That's why we have suffering?
Yes, that we don't recognize our connection, that we believe we're all alone. Like how you were living before.
Well, yes, I felt that way. And, I attempted suicide on 3 different occasions during that period. And I believe that was the pull towards that. And people that commit suicide, I believe, again, in that dying process, that they have that opportunity. I believe the majority of them are probably good people that were just, so blinded by the pain in them. And I can understand that because I was there. I felt that pain. And the thing that stopped me, I was on a 3rd-story ledge at a hotel, sitting out there. I'd taken out the screen out of the window. I was sitting on a ledge, kind of inching myself, just knowing one little push and it'll all be over. I won't hurt anymore. I'll be with my son. I'll be okay. And so I understand that, but I saw a vision of my son, Chris, come straight at me. And he said, "Mommy, don't." And I fell backwards and thought to myself, how horrible that would have been for him. So those who have lost loved ones to suicide, God bless you. And my heart just breaks for you, but just know they're okay. I mean, they're not going to hell for what they did. They will have a choice to repent from that, to say, I'm sorry for the pain I've caused my loved ones, and I'm sorry that they weren't saved from that, but they weren't, but they're going to be okay. I believe that, unless they were really, really evil, and I just can't believe that majority of people are like that.
Thank you for sharing that. I've actually lost some loved ones to suicide, so it's really touching for you to share that. So many people say when they have these NDEs that experiencing the other side is more real than it is here. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, because you know that you know that you know, and here sometimes you doubt. So doubt will creep its way into your psyche, and you're not sure, but there, I knew. I mean, it lasted this many years. I know today what I knew then, and yes, absolutely, everything is crystal clear. There's no, I'm not sure, none of that.
Beautiful. Do you think on some level there was a part of you, maybe some people call it your higher self or even your soul? Do you think that you planned that experience? You pre-planned it?
Oh no, I don't. I don't know. Because I grew up without any faith. I had no teaching in anything, any religion, or so I don't know how I could have done that. There was no way that I could have. I really was not taught anything. And I had a desire after my experience. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. My mom had followed Catholicism, so I went to a Catholic church, and I went and talked to the priest and told him what happened. He got really mad at me. I said, "Who do you think you are? That would happen to you? And you think some type of miracle happened to you?" And I said, "I don't know. That's why I'm here." But I had no faith whatsoever. And I went to the Catholic church every single day, 7 days a week. Every morning at 6 o'clock, they had mass, and I was there. I was praying, just being with God. And then a friend told me about an evangelical church where I could learn about the Bible and stuff. So I started going there on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings after the Catholic church. So I was in prayer constantly, and I grew in faith and knowledge of knowing. I felt somewhat led that way into Christianity. And maybe that's why, because of my mom being a Catholic, or that's probably the only thing I knew. But I would have been, it wouldn't have mattered what it was. I think any type of faith-filled thing would have attracted me at that point. So whether I did pre-plan anything, whether God did or not, I don't know,
Yeah. So you had this experience in the 60s, right?
Yes.
People weren't talking about this kind of thing back then. Did you have anyone you could talk to about this? Were people open to the idea? How was that for you when you came back?
Well, it shocked people. I mean, it scared some people. Like I say, I would tell them about it. And the reason I felt I was back was bring people to me. Well, I don't think I did that. I think I just scared people half to death. But my grandmother, I remember, saw something or heard something about this experience happening to some other man. And she called me right away, and she was so excited. And my mother was so excited. Every time we'd have, excuse me, I sit myself. Every time we'd have company come over or something, she would tell them, "Oh, Kat, tell them about this or tell them about that," or it was, weird. And no, I hadn't heard of anybody having an experience like that. And I didn't until probably, 10 years after that. So I didn't know. I didn't know what happened to me. And people I would talk to thought it would be better if I just kind of kept it quiet and just had it be the motivation behind me to do what God had asked me to do. But I didn't. I told people. I was not afraid to speak out on God's behalf because I felt that God had led me to do that. So
and Kat, what would you say is our purpose here as human beings? I know that's a big question. I've heard everything from experiencing emotions to learning what love is, to learning lessons. From your experience, what would you say is our purpose here?
I think for myself, it's to learn. I'm here on earth to strengthen my eternal relationship in heaven. And it'll be so far beyond anything even that I have experienced that, there are people that have had these experiences that actually get into heaven and talk to Jesus or talk to God or talk to whoever. But I didn't get that far. So I think it's going to be absolutely incredible. And I think I'm here on earth right now to prepare myself for that. I know it's going to be far beyond anything I know. I don't know either, too. I don't know if what my obedience to God helps in any way in my eternal life. I'm not sure about any of that. I feel very led by God. I feel that almost every decision I make certainly is brought before God, and I wait for that feeling, that knowing of, okay, let's go do this. And so I believe that obedience, learning all of these things that we have to learn on earth.
Beautiful. And one last question I have for you is, what advice or what would you say to someone who's really struggling right now, who's experiencing depression, who, God forbid, may be contemplating suicide? What would you say to them?
There's a reason you were born, and you need I know you're miserable right now. I know that you're fearful right now, but trust me that there's more. You can get over the hump. You're on an uphill battle right now, but once you get to the top, you're going to slide down the other side and it's going to be great. So any decision that you make to make yourself as God, which would suicide or anything of that would be taking away from God's purpose for you, is wrong. And I'm not saying you would go to hell or you'll be punished or anything else. I'm just saying, please hang on, because it's critical for you. And if you think things are bad now, believe me, they can get worse. I mean, one of the things my husband and I used to always say to each other when we were going through the depths of bankruptcy and losing things and my son being killed and all these things, well, at least things can't get any worse. And we'd turn around and something would happen even worse. So it was certainly a lesson that even though you're at the depths of despair, hang on, and to find somebody. I mean, there's so many resources out there, and you say, well, I've tried that, it doesn't work. Keep trying. Don't give up. Please don't give up.
Thank you so much. And Kat, tell us about your book.
My book I wrote because, like I say, I'm 80 years old now, and I want my story to go on, and it goes into a lot more detail of the questions that you've been asking and things that I wanted to tell people. And it's called "Is It Safe to Die?" I'll give you an upfront. It is, but it maybe answers maybe a better answer to your question that you just asked me. But I would encourage people to buy it. People say, well, you're trying to make money off this. Authors don't make money. Trust me. It cost me $2,000 to have it edited, so the words were right, and $2,000 to get it published. So I'm not trying to make money on it. Please trust me for that. I'm trying to get the words I feel God gave me out to people as best I can, and possibly leave something for when I'm gone. So it's called "Is It Safe to Die?" and it's on Amazon. And if you want to just email me at my emails is the Kat137. It's THEKAT137 at AOL.com. If you're at that place where Christine's talking about, where you're really stuck, email me. I'd love to talk to you, and we can work through this together. And I do encourage you to buy the book because it will help a lot of people that are suffering right now.
Thank you so much, Kat. I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I'm sure it will bring many people messages of hope and encouragement to keep on going, right?
Right. Keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kat. It's been a true pleasure.
Yes. Thank you, Christine.